Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever applies to you. I hope you're well and welcome to Big Foodie Geek, and I am the Big Foodie Geek. Now we're going to be doing something a little different today because usually I'll come on here and I'll show you how to make a recipe that I've come up with, or I'll review some gadgets or something like that. But today I'm actually going to be making something out of a recipe book. And you might be thinking, why would I bother watching a video of you making something out of a recipe book when I can just use the recipe book? But that's the point really, because how do you know if a recipe book is any good? You can go online, you can have a look, see reviews, or you can go into a bookshop and flick through yourself. But how do you know whether it's going to be any good or not until you try it? So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to try out some recipe books and see if they're any good, and then you can make up your own mind whether you want to go and buy it. Hopefully this video will be useful for you, because if you're thinking about buying any of the recipe books that I end up doing in this series, and you watch this and go, actually, yeah, that's good, I'm going to buy it, or actually, no, that doesn't look so great, I'm not going to bother, then job done. I'm not getting anything out of this, really, other than hoping it will be useful for you. And any ad revenue from this video as well, of course. So the one we're going to start off with today is hopefully going to be a lot of fun, because it is the official Friends Cookbook. Yep, we are going back in time to the 90s, where there were curtain hairstyles and all sorts of questionable fashion choices all over the place, back to Friends. And it's still a very popular show even now, whatever streaming service it's on, I'm not sure. Is it Netflix? Who knows? I thought this would just be a really fun one to start off with, because it seems a bit novelty, but I have had a look through and some of the recipes look really good. Now, food was all over the place in Friends. It was literally everywhere. Monica was a chef, Joey loved food, Monica stuck a turkey on her head to cheer up Chandler.
Nice try.
And of course, Ross's moist maker sandwich, where he flips out when his boss ends up eating it. That's in here.
You threw my sandwich away. My sandwich! My sandwich!
But I'm not going to be making the moist maker today or Monica's head turkey, but I am going to make 3 recipes out of this book, kind of like a starter, a main, and a dessert, because I figured that would be a good way to show a little bit of variety in here, and we can see if they're any good. Actually, it's technically going to be 4 recipes, because there is also a recipe for Joey's Marinara sauce in here, which we're going to start off with, because we're going to need that for one of the later recipes. So we're going to start off with that, because it's going to take about an hour or so, so I want to get on with that first. So let's get started with making stuff from the Friends official cookbook. Before we get started in earnest, in case you were wondering, yes, there is actually a recipe for Rachel's meat trifle in here, the infamous one where she got 2 recipes mixed up and ended up making half a shepherd's pie and half a trifle, 2 very British dishes. It is in here, see, Rachel's meat trifle, but it's a bit of a cop-out, to be honest, because there's very little meat in it. It's actually really just a bunch of fruit topped with some whipped cream and some bacon, so it's not really meaty at all. In fact, it's not even what I would class as a trifle, because it doesn't have any like sponge fingers or anything like that. It uses pound cake, which is an American thing, but yeah, no, it's a bit of a cop-out. But I suppose they weren't going to put like half a shepherd's pie and half a trifle in here. Actually, here you go, half a shepherd's pie. But this is what we're starting off with. We need to make Joey's marinara sauce for one of the later recipes. So this is going to be a rather nice marinara sauce, which should be pretty versatile, can be used for pizzas and all kinds of things. This book, because obviously it's an American show, these are American measurements, so it's using things like cups and ounces. We don't do those here in the UK, but I do have some things to measure cups. I find recipes in cups are far too inaccurate. There's too much margin for error. You know, it's different for various things. You know, if you have a cup of flour and a cup of water, they're kind of 2 different quantities really, because obviously they're different densities and things like that. So yeah, I am not a fan of cups. So with this, it says 5 pounds of Roma tomatoes. Well, I don't have those. Or 2 28-ounce cans crushed or stewed tomatoes. Well, I've got cans of chopped tomatoes, 28 ounces, roughly, I think about 470 grams-ish. So that's going to be about nearly 8 kilos worth of tomatoes. so I'm going to use those. And then we just want things like olive oil, onion, salt, pepper, and all of the herbs, basil, oregano, parsley, and thyme. And then optionally water and honey if you want to sweeten it up a bit. So let's get started with making with this. And the good thing is we can skip a bunch of steps because we're not using the fresh tomatoes. We are just using the tinned tomatoes. Because we're not using the fresh tomatoes, is skip right down to here and heat a large heavy saucepan on medium. Well, I'm using my skillet here, but it is very heavy. So that will do nicely on medium. And then once hot, add the olive oil. So in here we need 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm going to estimate that about 1, and then 2. Okay, that's been about a minute. And then it says to add the onion. Then it says saute the onions until translucent and aromatic for about 3 to 4 minutes. Those onions are very aromatic now, so I'm just going to move those over to the side of this pan because it is cooler over that side. I don't want them to burn. And then we need to go in with the tomatoes and the herbs. So let's go in with the tomatoes first. These come in at roughly 400 grams each. Because it says use 28-ounce cans, those are a bit more than these, so I'm going to use 3 cans of these, whereas you probably only need 2 if you were actually using 28-ounce cans. 1 tin, 2 tins. Get those onions mixed through that tomato. Now this is going to make a lot of marinara sauce, but it fits in with what happens in the series, because in the book it says under the recipe, when a network casting lady comes on to Joey, he's confused as to whether he has to sleep with her to get a part on a popular soap opera. When his agent Estelle confirms that he does, he gets so stressed out, he makes enough marinara sauce to feed Italy. Who knew it would take so much sauce to become Dr. Drake Ramore?
Whoa, whoa. So I'm guessing you didn't get the part, or Italy called and said it was hungry?
Next I'm going in with my herbs. Here's where these measuring cup things come in very handy for this part. So it says to use 1/3 of a cup of each of the herbs, and starting with oregano, or oregano as they say in the US. My battery just went, so you missed me putting in the time, but trust me, the time has gone in. I've got the time. So now I'm going in with the parsley. This stuff always reminds me of my guinea pigs when I was a kid, because we would give them parsley and they would go mad for it, and the smell of it just reminds me of giving my guinea pigs from when I was a kid their parsley. So it's a nice memory. And last but by no means least is the basil, my joint favourite herb alongside rosemary. I love basil, and I nearly missed a step, which was to season with salt and pepper. So here goes some salt and some black pepper as well. Oh dear, getting that everywhere. Now it says allow ingredients to come to a rolling boil about 2 to 5 minutes. Now does that mean it will come to a rolling boil in about 2 to 5 minutes, or leave it on a rolling boil for 2 to 5 minutes? That's a little bit hazy. What I'll do is I'll compromise, I'll let it come up to a rolling boil, not too fierce because this will spatter everywhere, and then I'll give it a couple of minutes at that boil, and then I will leave it to simmer. Now that has been doing its thing for a couple of minutes, so I'm going to leave this to simmer. I've turned it down to low. It doesn't say whether to put a lid on it or not, so I'm going to leave a lid off, and I will just keep an eye on it because I don't want it to get too thick or even burn. And if it does look like it's going to get too thick, then I will put a lid on it, which I'm sure you're all wishing I would put a lid on it most of the time.
1 hour later.
Okay, my marinara sauce has had a good hour simmering away, and that looks like a good thickness, to be honest, because I can drag it through. It's not filling in with any excess liquid or anything like that. I just want to have a quick taste to see whether it needs any of the optional honey that it says you can add if it's too acidic. Have a quick taste. Yeah, because that is chopped tomatoes, that's quite acidic, so I am going to put in some optional honey. It says about a tablespoon, so let's give it a good squeeze of honey right there. Mix that through. Another taste. Yeah, that's better. Not so acidic, not so sharp, just about right. That is a nice sauce. So I'm going to pop that into a container for later, and I'm going to move on to the first actual meal recipe in this book that we want to try. Okay, our starter recipe from Friends, the television series, the official cookbook, is Noodle Soup. Yes, this is Noodle Soup in reference to when Joey auditions for a commercial where he's a dad eating soup with his kid, but he can't get his lines quite right. Soup is all he has to say, but he just can't stop saying, noodle soup.
Soup. I mean noodle soup. I mean soup. Come on!
Whatever line you say, this soup is sure to warm the bones. The egg brings a hearty and yet airy thickness to the soup without causing it to have the consistency of a stew. That's an interesting thing with this soup. It is going to have egg in it. I am going to be making some adjustments in this because it says to use 8 cups of turkey stock, which I don't have. You can make the turkey stock, there is a recipe for it in here, but that involves having a turkey carcass, and I don't have a turkey, and I would need to cook the turkey, and I'm not buying a turkey just for myself, just to cook it. But I do have chicken stock, so I'm going to use that. It says use 1 pound of chicken sausage cut into 2-inch pieces. It also says 1 pound chicken sausage, which I think is like a cured chicken sausage, which I don't think we can really get over here. It probably is available somewhere, but not easily found, so I'm going to use some chicken sausages instead, which will do just as well. And it also says use alphabet pasta. Now this is kind of like the alphabet shaped pasta. Again, we don't really have that over here unless you're talking about ones maybe in cans. The actual dried stuff we don't have, so I'm going to be using macaroni instead. It also says use chiffonade cut kale. Is that a specific type of kale? I don't know. So I'm just going to be using regular kale. It has a recipe here, but it's like for a kale slaw, which I don't think is going to go in here necessarily. So I'm just going to go with regular kale. I'm not a huge fan of kale. I just think it's cabbage, to be honest. So the first thing it says for us to do is, in a large stock pot, heat the turkey stock on medium-high until it comes to a rolling boil, then reduce the heat to medium. So I'm going to be putting in the 8 cups of turkey stock. That actually works out at about 1.8 litres. So that is 1 litre there. And here's the other 800 millilitres. And we'll just let that come up to a rolling boil. Right, with our stock up to a rolling boil, I'm just going to bring that down to a medium heat. And then we can move on to the eggs, which is a really interesting part of this, because it says it's just going to give it a really nice texture and consistency, which I wouldn't think of putting into soup, to be honest. But let's roll with it, because we are going by the book, or as close to the book as I possibly can with my English ingredients. So the book says in a large bowl, use a hand mixer on a medium-high speed to beat the egg whites until they form soft peaks, 2 to 3 minutes. So I've got the white of 4 eggs here, then on with the hand whisk. Right, that's not soft peaks yet, but the book says, while you are beating the eggs, add the juice of 1 lemon. Now that is very interesting, because that is not something I would usually do, because I don't think acid and eggs particularly mix very well, because they can split. But it doesn't say at what stage to kind of add this in. So is it midway? Is it near the end? I don't know. So I'm doing it now. There's 2 lemons in here, so I'm going to use half of this, then back whisking this, and hopefully it will still be fine. That's as close as I'm getting to soft peaks, I think. Again, I think the lemon juice has made this a little bit unstable. So I would suggest, if you are putting the lemon juice in, do it a little bit later after you've got a bit more consistency in the eggs, because it does make it take ages to get anywhere near this sort of stage, but that'll do, I think. Then it says to whisk the egg yolks until pale in colour. There we go, that looks pretty pale to me. Then we're to gently fold these into the egg whites. Then it says to slowly ladle in some of the turkey broth to temper the eggs. So I've got some in a cup here because it gives me greater control. So we've got to put it in and just keep stirring to stop the egg from splitting. Just keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. So stir until the broth thickens, about 5 minutes. Okay, it's been 5 minutes and that broth has definitely thickened. So we are now going to add the sausage. As I said, I don't have actual like chicken sausage that you might get from a deli in the US, but I have chicken sausages, which I have halved, and I'm going to pop those in. And it says to cook for 4 to 5 minutes, but because these are actual sausages that aren't pre-cooked, I might actually give them a bit longer, maybe 7 or 8. Next, we need to add in our pasta. And like I said, I'm not using alphabet pasta because we don't have it, so I'm using macaroni instead. Now here's where I take a bit of umbrage over the name Noodle Soup, because I think of noodles and I think of noodles that you get in things like stir fries and general Asian cuisine, whereas this is pasta. And I know Americans call it pasta noodles, but over here, and pretty much anywhere else, pasta and noodles are 2 different things. But someone from Italy will tell you this is pasta, and I'm sure someone from Asia will tell you this is pasta and noodles are completely separate. So it's very misleading, and I don't know why pasta gets called pasta noodles over there. Semantics. So this needs to go in, then this needs 5 to 7 minutes to cook, and basically until the pasta has grown and doubled in size pretty much. So yeah, I'm just going to wait and stand around and let the pasta cook, and you can just skip ahead. So it now says to remove the pot from the heat. Now the thing that worries me at the moment is that this is quite cloudy, whereas on here, the broth is quite clear. Maybe I've done something wrong along the way. Maybe this is just Photoshop magic, who knows? But we shall continue because we're nearly there. I'm actually using chipotle chili flakes here because they got a nice flavour to them, a bit more heat as well. And again, red pepper flakes is quite generic. It could be chili flakes, it could be bog standard bell pepper flakes, or I'm going for these ones. Then it says to add a cup of chiffonade cut kale. Well, that's a cup of kale. It's not a lot. So I'm going to put in more than that because that's a stupid measurement. Let's go with handful, then stir. Then I've got to cover it and just leave it for 5 minutes until the kale softens. So the kale's had 5 minutes to soften, which it has indeed. Then it says to season with the additional lemon juice and then salt and pepper to taste. I'm only putting a pinch of salt in because obviously that stock has got salt in it anyway. But let's give the broth a quick taste to see if it needs anything else. That does look a bit split, to be honest. It's quite lemony. Honestly, I think that was too much lemon, so I'm going to actually balance that out with some honey like we did for our marinara sauce earlier. Right, one more taste. That is less lemony. It has got an unmistakable taste of lemon in it though, but a bit of a kick from that chipotle, that's nice. Right, I'm not going to play around with that anymore because I could spend all day trying to balance that out. So I'm going to put this to one side and we can move on to our next recipe. So our next recipe, which is going to be our main, is going to be from the one with the ride-along, which is Joey's Meatball Sub. Now this is the one which it says here, when Joey, Ross and Chandler go on the ride-along with Phoebe's boyfriend the cop, his patrol car backfires. Scared and thinking they're being shot at, Joey jumps to cover Ross. Chandler gets upset and jealous, only to find out that Joey was trying to save his Meatball Sub. It sounds crazy, but Joey's Meatball Sub is the greatest sandwich in the world. Be careful to not oversmell all the mouth-watering goodness or you'll suck up all the taste units. Now we are going a bit Joey heavy with these recipes, but I bloody love a Meatball Sub, so I wanted to go for it. It says it's the greatest sandwich in the world, but that's a bold claim, so we're going to have to actually see if it lives up to that. So the first step of this says to preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit and line with a baking sheet of parchment paper. So that is about 190 degrees Celsius. So I've already done that. And then the next step is very simple. In a large bowl, use your hands to combine all the ingredients. Be careful not to overmix, as this will make the mixture tough. First, you use 3/4 pound of ground pork, 3/4 pound of ground beef. That is roughly 340 grams each. This is going to make a lot of meatballs. Then we go in with half an onion, diced, about 2 tablespoons each of oregano, parsley, thyme and basil, all herbs that we used in the marinara sauce from earlier. Half a cup of breadcrumbs, these are panko breadcrumbs, so hopefully they will be nice and absorbent. 1/3 cup of red wine, I am using an alcohol-free one because I don't do the booze. Then 2 eggs, which I'm guessing will help bind this. I've already kind of beaten these roughly. Then 1/3 cup of toasted pine nuts, which will give it a nice bite and texture, I suppose. I really like pine nuts, so that's interesting. And then just get in with my hands and start to combine this all. That's come together pretty well. I'm just going to try and make sure that everything is distributed through there, so we're not just getting pine nuts in all one bit. Apparently this should make about 6 sandwiches. So yeah, there's only me here, so I guess I'm going to be having meatballs for a few days. Should I just cook it as one big meatball? Next it says to form meatballs 2 to 3 inches in diameter. Those are some big balls, yo. So let's make some big balls. Not even going to apologise for that. So there are my meatballs all formed. I should note that it didn't actually specify with the meat what percentage of fat to use, so I went for 20% fat because I figured more fat, more flavour. But obviously that fat is going to render out and make these balls a bit smaller. Look, it happens to the best of us. So these are now going into the oven for about 20 minutes. Okay, the meatballs have had 20 minutes and they are a nice golden brown. I can't see a thing because my glasses have just steamed up, but yes, I think they are a nice golden brown. Yes, those look lovely. So I'm going to put those to one side because next we need to start making the sandwiches, which is not as simple as it sounds. So next it says, in a large pot over a medium heat, heat the marinara sauce. This is the one we made earlier. Once the meatballs are baked, place them in the marinara sauce and allow to simmer for 10 to 15 minutes. It says to use 3 cups, but because I'm not going to be using all these meatballs because I'm only going to make one sandwich, I'll probably do about 1.5. So let's go with 1.5. Okay, our marinara sauce is heating up, so I'm going to get 3 of these meatballs into that sauce. Apologies for that camera angle, that was abysmal. You got more of the oven top than you did anything else. Anyway, these need to simmer in that for about 10 minutes. And while those are simmering away in that sauce, we need to sort out our actual roll. We're going to be using an Italian sub roll. Now these are actually quite tricky to get hold of here in the UK, at least decent ones. I mean, you could go to Subway and see if they'll give you some. But otherwise, I don't think they're too easy to get hold of in supermarkets and stuff like that. That's why I made these. I made 4 of these yesterday. Now, if you want to see how to make these, I actually made these in a video where I made a Philly cheesesteak for the first time. So if you want to see how to make these, you can go and watch that video. That is in the first part of that video. So you can make these from scratch. And it says place 2 or 3 slices of mozzarella cheese inside and place the Italian sub on a baking sheet. So I don't have slices of mozzarella. They didn't sell them anywhere here. So instead I got some of the pizza mozzarella and I've sliced that roughly. Then I'll pop that onto my baking tray and pop that into the oven for 5 minutes to allow that cheese to melt. Right, it's been 5 minutes and that cheese is very, very nice and melty. The bread is toasted and those have had their time simmering away as well, and that sauce has now thickened nicely around the meatballs too. So next we need to construct this bad boy. So we need to pop our meatballs in. These are very, very big. Then it says to sprinkle over some Parmesan cheese, which I've got here. Then it says to finish off with some chopped parsley. I'm not going to do that because honestly, I'm not a big fan of parsley by itself. I'm not a huge fan of the flavour. It's fine when you put it into stuff or it's part of a sauce or something like that, but by itself, no thanks. So instead, I'm going to use some basil for a bit of green because that is a much better herb. And there we go, that is a huge meatball sandwich. That does look pretty good actually. Fair play, Joey, fair play. So last but by no means least is going to be Phoebe's oatmeal cookie ice cream sandwiches for dessert, and this is from the one with a dozen lasagnas. So there are 3 things you should know about Phoebe. 1, her friends are the most important thing in her life. 2, she never lies. And 3, she makes the best oatmeal raisin cookies in the world. Pair those cookies with your favourite ice cream and you will discover a 4th truth. Phoebe's ice cream sandwiches are a game changer.
Oh my God! Why have I never tasted these before? Oh, I don't make them a lot because I don't think it's fair to the other cookies.
So yes, these are the famous oatmeal cookies that apparently are the best ever. Again, a bold claim, but we will find this out. And I like the fact that they've turned them into ice cream sandwiches rather than having a cookie recipe. So the first thing I'll note is it says use sticks of butter. We don't do sticks of butter here in the UK. We have blocks of butter and that's it. I think 2 sticks is roughly a block of our UK butter, so that should work out. These should be nice and simple, nice and quick, but also hopefully very tasty because Phoebe says they're the best ever. I guess we'll find out, won't we? So the first thing it said to do was to preheat the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, that's about 190 degrees Celsius. I've already done that because it was on for the meatballs earlier, and I've also lined a baking sheet again. So it says in a large bowl, mix together the butter, granulated sugar and brown sugar, vanilla extract, that's quite a lot, and eggs. It doesn't say how long to mix them for, it just says mix together, that is well mixed. Then in another bowl we need to add the dry ingredients of the flour. There's 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour, that translates to plain flour over here. A teaspoon of ground cinnamon, then a tablespoon of salt. Tablespoon of salt, that's a lot of salt. That is a lot of salt. Well, that's what it says, so that's what I'll do. Tablespoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda or baking powder as we call it over here. Then 3 cups of rolled oats, so 1, and then 1 cup of raisins. Then we add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients and mix together until a dough forms. Right, I'm going to get in there with my hands because I can't get into the nooks and crannies here. Right, that's come into a nice dough, a little bit sticky, but still a very nice dough. Then we need to scoop into tablespoon size balls. Apparently this makes 12 sandwiches, so that's 24 cookies, but I'm going to do 6 at this point because I mean, there's only me here. So we'll make 6, then I can put the rest of the dough in the fridge, and then these go into the oven and bake for 10 minutes. Right, these have had roughly 10 minutes, and well, those 4 look pretty decent. Those have kind of become 1. A bit smaller than I thought they would be. Maybe I should have flattened them out a bit more when I put them into the oven, but it said balls, it didn't specifically say to flatten them out, so I was just going by the book. These need to have some time to cool like that, and then they go onto a wire rack to cool further before they go into an ice cream sandwich. A little bit dark on the bottom, but that might be down to my oven more than anything else, but they look good and they smell good as well. So we just need to get some ice cream sandwich in between these. Then it says to put it into the freezer for about 15 minutes to firm up, so I'm going to do that, and then we can try all our 3 courses. So 4 recipes and 3 courses later, I'm now ready to try each of the dishes from the Friends official cookbook. And I'm going to start off with the noodle soup, which to be honest, I don't have high hopes for, because in the time I spent making the 2 other dishes, I've left it. I've reheated it in the microwave because I didn't want cold soup, but it is now less of a soup and more just a big bowl of pasta. The liquid has been absorbed into the pasta and it's not really a soup anymore. It's a big bowl of pasta with sausages and kale, which doesn't sound bad, but it is now not a noodle soup. Hello, Roko. Yeah, quite. Yeah, she's not a fan either, but it might taste all right, so I'm gonna give it a taste anyway. Right, cheers. When you get a bit of everything together with the pasta and the sausage and the kale, it's nice, But one, it's not a soup. And two, there's still an overriding taste of lemon in there. I really don't see what the lemon has added to this. I don't know why it went into the egg white, and I don't know why. It might have done with a squeeze of lemon maybe, but not that much juice from 2 small lemons. It is too much, it's too overpowering. This might be a thing with noodle soup, but I don't know. I've never made it before, and I've never really had anything like this before. So if anyone watching has made noodle soup before, let me know if that's an actual thing, let me know if that's specific to this recipe, let me know what it's supposed to do, because quite frankly, I think the lemon made the egg split, and that's kind of not helped with the consistency, but I just don't see why it's added to it at all. So not the best of starts to the recipes out of the book, but not a disaster either. But this one, I am very much looking forward to trying, because this looks pretty darn epic. Look at that. There's going to be no pretty way of doing this, but I am just going to get in there and give it a big old bite. Oh God, I can't even get my mouth around it. Yeah, that is a very, very tasty meatball sandwich, a huge meatball sandwich. It makes a lot. Those meatballs are huge, and I still had, what, 5 left over? Best sandwich ever? Probably not, but it is a very, very good meatball sandwich. And then lastly, an ice cream sandwich using, inverted commas, the best oatmeal raisin cookies ever. So they certainly smell very good coming out of there, but let's see how they eat as an ice cream sandwich. Oh, a bit fell off. Those are good. Very nice and chewy yet crisp oatmeal raisin cookies with ice cream in the middle. You can't go wrong with that. Are they the best ever? There is a slightly lingering taste of salt in there. I did think it was too much salt, a tablespoon's worth in that mix. I would usually put about a teaspoon in, but it doesn't really damage the cookies in any way. It's not overwhelming. You don't want to go like, oh my God, I need some water after that. But it is still a lot of salt, so I would dial that back. But they are good cookies, and it is a good ice cream sandwich. So there you go, 3 recipes from Friends, the television series, the official cookbook. That title is a mouthful, much like that meatball sub was, which was very good. So overall as a cookbook, would I recommend it? Well, this answer is going to be a bit of a cop-out, but it depends. So I think one, it depends on how big of a Friends fan you are. If you are a big Friends fan, then it is probably worth getting just for the novelty alone. Now, if you're in the UK, all those measurements, as you saw, are in cups and things like that. It makes it difficult when you're trying to convert. And I think some of the things kind of lost a little bit in that conversion from cups to grams and things like that. And again, some of the ingredients are a bit more specific to the US. So if you aren't confident in converting those measurements or getting alternative ingredients, then maybe it's not the book for you. But if you are a fan of Friends and you are happy converting those ingredients, or you are in the US anyway, then it's probably worth picking up because it's good fun. It's got a lot of really nice recipes in there, and they are probably all worth a try at some point because they look great. And quite frankly, I would probably try some of these, but try and adapt them using UK measurements and things like that. So I think following it as an actual recipe book, it's not ideal for people in the UK or perhaps people who aren't confident doing things like converting the ingredients. But as a book for ideas and a book for a bit of fun for a Friends fan or anything like that, it's worth having, I think, but there are better recipe books out there overall. So there you go, that is my first recipe book review video. That's a mouthful as well. So I do hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, then obviously like the video, subscribe to the channel, notification bell, all those things. And let me know what you thought of the format in general, whether I need to tweak it. Obviously it's my first one, and that was like 3-4 recipes actually, so it might be a lot to edit, so I'll see how this turns out. But I will see you next time on Big Foodie Geek, and I will greet you with a hearty, how you doing? It wasn't bad. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good, I managed to clip my mic to my chest here, well done. Well done, me.